This is reposted.
All right, party people, it is time for the reposted sales series. We're going to take a couple of sales quotes and kind of examine them. We're going to start with our number one hombre here on the reposted podcast. Sometimes he's Uncle Kirk, sometimes he's the executive producer. You never know. He's a friend of the program. Hello there, Kirk Peterson.
How you guys doing today? Thanks for having me on.
Outstanding. So when I met you years ago, you were selling air conditioners for a living. Now, I say that playfully. You were selling the big, huge HVAC air conditioners that they have for industrial complexes. This is for Carrier. And we were having this meeting a long time ago. You would tell me that you went and this one guy used a concept called belly to belly. Get belly to belly with your clients. Talk about that meeting and what that means as a salesperson.
Yeah, sure. So I was a young pup, just on a relatively young sales team here in the Bay Area. And our sales manager had but there was one guy on the sales team had been there 10, 15 years longer than the rest of us. So he was kind of the godfather of sales. And, and he was selling 3 times more than all the rest of us, or maybe combined. And so the sales manager asked us to go into this meeting and make a 30-minute sales presentation about something that we did. Well, there's a lot of latitude. And so all of us young guys get up with our PowerPoint presentations and talk about variable frequency drives and why ours is better than the other guy, and slow leaking seals and all this stuff. And he's the last guy to go. And so he gets up, no computer, no PowerPoint, but he goes over to the whiteboard in the corner and takes out the magic marker out of his pocket. And he starts at the upper left-hand corner and makes this big half circle down to the bottom left. And then from the upper right to the bottom right. So these 2 half circles are touching in the middle. And he just looks at all of us and sits down. And so he lets this kind of comic, long, dramatic silence go. And he's like, that's it. That's the secret to sales. He's like, you got to get belly to belly with your customer. And I love this story because it was, I don't even remember what my presentation was on, but like this thing sticks in my head 18 years later about this pitch about, man, you've got to get face to face with your customers and understand who they are.
I think that's interesting because I think about the Tommy Boy scene where he finally lets his guard down and sells the brake pads because he's not nervous anymore. But we've talked about on this podcast a lot about how there was traditional ways of thinking. And I like that this guy was older than you. I was reading about sales, and this guy says nobody plays football in the NFL for 20 years from seniority. You have to beat out the younger players. And with this change in the way the world is working with COVID, you manage salespeople now. Like, what are you seeing? Are people able to be effective by this paradigm shift to being able to connect with people remotely? Because the technology didn't exist when you had this belly to belly whiteboard meeting.
No, that's for sure. And I think we find ourselves in trying times, but I still believe that face to face, you just get so much more understanding of what somebody's about. But the real core to this for me is you have to know your customer and like what their pain points are and what they're thinking about and what's the hardest part of their job, and just really understand what they need to be able to provide that instead of just answering the phone.
We'll get to like you managing in a second, but like, why do you think you were a good salesperson? Like, what did you do better than anybody else, or what was your most confident part of your sales game?
That's just, there's a compliment wrapped up in that question, which I appreciate. I'm not sure that I was a great salesperson, but I started out young, as I was always trying to emulate the most successful person around me. Like that was my strategy. It was like, I'm going to look at the best guy doing what he does and follow his lead. Eventually I figured out that like I had to make it my sales process around my personality. You can watch Jim Furyk's golf swing, and he's one of the best in the world at what he does. But if you try to copy that, like you're going to have a bad time on the golf course. So I took some pieces from the people that I saw around me that were successful, but I really ended up finding out like, man, what I'm really about is I like helping people and I like solving people's problems. And so that really shifted my view from trying to sell a product to trying to solve problems and provide solutions.
So admittedly, I don't really know what you do. You used to sell HVAC systems and now you do something different. How does this belly to belly thing apply on different scales? So like you're selling a cell phone in an AT&T store versus working for Amazon fulfillment services, selling a multi-million-dollar software. Like there's everything in between. I like this concept that you have to be around people, but like, does it apply in every aspect that you've touched?
No, for sure. There's some sales processes that are just commodity, right? You're going to buy a bottle of shampoo. That's going to be almost an exclusively price-based thing. This definitely applies. My experience has all been in more highly engineered technical product, where somebody is going to be willing to maybe pay a little bit more for the expertise of the service, or the fact that you're solving issues for them that your competition might not be able to.
And so you're able to convey that more accurately, like, show me your problem, this is how I can fix it, versus on a Zoom call being like, oh, here's a text sheet on this 30-ton unit.
Yeah, exactly. And that hey, that I understand where you're at and what you're going through. And the other piece to this too is that, wrapped in the kind of belly to belly concept, is just about like proactive touches with customers. Like, I really encourage all my sales guys to have a goal, like, hey, I'm going to make 10 proactive customer contacts a day. 2 of those are going to be around existing quotes. One's going to be a customer that I've lost at some point in the past that I'm just checking in on, and try to set these metrics and hold those up, because if you're not proactively reaching out, you're missing some opportunities.
So you used to be the sales guy. Now you manage the sales team at Peterson Enterprises. Do you like the idea of motivating other people to sell more than you actually selling yourself?
There's always a grass is greener philosophy. Like, I miss the hardcore, hey, I'm just responsible for myself. I'm going to go out, get in my truck, and go meet some people today. I miss that aspect of the sales process, but I also really enjoy managing a sales team. I feel like I've been able to be fairly successful at working with those people, and mostly through something I learned from you, Larry, which is just asking questions. Like, I feel like if a guy's got a customer for 3 months and I ask him some questions about who's the decision maker at the operation, how much total revenue are they doing, how much of the stuff that we sell do they buy a year total, if in 3 to 6 months of having a customer, if you can't answer those questions and know who the decision makers are and who the gatekeepers are, and what the how much of their total business are we getting, then you're missing a step somewhere. So I enjoy that. I enjoy working with the people to try to help them be successful.
So I apologize. I have a caveat before everything I've said during this interview, but what is it like telling salespeople to go out and be belly to belly when you don't live in the same city as them?
It's tough. It's really tough. That's a good question. No, that is arguably the most difficult part of my job, is that I've been remote for the last couple of years as I've managed a sales team. So that applies to me as well, which is, I would be a more successful manager if I was able to be belly to belly with each one of my sales guys. But we're spread out over the country, so that's a difficult task to try to keep up. But I think a lot of that too is, I try, and I'm not always successful at it, but I try to make proactive phone calls when it's not something about, hey, I need them to get this report in, or they're not calling me with an emergency. It's, hey, how you doing? What's going on in your life? What's going on with your family? And having more of a personal contact. I feel like that allows me to be more effective when I'm able to pull that off.
Early on in our friendship, like 16 years ago, you totally were nerding out, and you're like, dude, they're putting in my air conditioner on this hospital. You got to come watch this with me. We're going to bring the big crane. And we nerded out and watched your air conditioner get put on this hospital. It's like this great moment for us.
That was fantastic. I still remember that. That was the first big chiller I ever sold. I was so fired up.
I think in the spirit of me one-upping everyone, I installed or removed a water tower at 350 California in San Francisco with a helicopter.
Nice. But you weren't in the helicopter.
No, I was hanging Mission Impossible style from the bottom of it, saying, go that way, go that way. Well, if you want a HVAC system, please reach out. You can find it at Reposted Podcast on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram. I'm Andrew Keller for Kirk and the Belly, saying thank you for stopping by.